And I know we haven't introduced everybody yet, and we will, as we go through the day, you'll get to meet some of the people that are building our HPC cloud. You've met me at some level. I think I've had the chance to shake everybody's hand. I want to give you a little bit of my background from an HPC perspective, and then there were two other gentlemen that we were actually all sitting over there trying to convince Vinay to stop talking. Karan Bhatta and Tejas Karmakar. The three of us have worked together for the better part of about 6 years doing high performance computing, doing HPC work. And the path that's brought us here to Oracle is something that we've gotten from a number of people that we need to do a little bit more talking about, that we need to share a little bit more about. So I'm going to talk for both of my colleagues a little bit. I'm going to introduce them. I would encourage you throughout the day, grab some time with each one of them and get to know them a little bit better. And you'll hear a little bit more from each of them throughout the day. So the first is Karan Bhatta, who you may have seen sitting over there. Karan is originally from New Zealand, or actually he's from India. Grew up in New Zealand. Karan, I first met Karan back in 2016 or so. The company that he was working for, some of you may have heard of Green Button. So Green Button was essentially an HPC scheduling service for rendering. They purchased all of the computers after the Lord of the Rings movie down in New Zealand. So all of the computers that were used for rendering of the movie. Who was the director? Peter Jackson. Peter Jackson literally was about to throw these machines away. They weren't going to ship them back. It was something like 80,000 cores that were used just for rendering the movie. The founder of Green Button actually reached out and said, "Hey, we'll buy them from you." Peter Jackson said, "You got $5 in your pocket? Done." So a massive amount of compute was sold for a very little amount of money. Green Button started as a kind of a boutique rendering company. Not very unusual. I think there's probably 20 or 30 of these companies in place today. Karan, coming out of university, began working for them as a developer, focusing on the GPU side. So he really was in charge initially of scheduling those machines. You must have heard his name. Anyway, he was responsible for scheduling those machines and making sure that those machines were ready to work on GPUs. In 2016, as part of Microsoft Azure's HPC cloud strategy, they acquired a scheduler. So you remember this is something that AWS did early on, was go out and acquire a scheduler. Likewise, Microsoft, this is before Cycle Computing, of course, Microsoft went out and acquired Green Button. So Karan started at Microsoft with that acquisition. He actually went in then and became the product manager for their GPU offering. And that's actually when I first met Karan. In 2017, Karan came to Oracle. We can maybe chat a little bit offline about what that looked like for each one of us making that transition. There are some non-compete things in play that we can't talk about as much as we would want to talk about. But basically, he saw the opportunity to deploy bare metal GPUs in the cloud. And that, for this particular workload, for GPUs, was something that was very important to him and very important to all of us. So now I'll talk a little bit about myself. That's a little bit easier to do. My background, I'm an aerospace and optimization aerospace engineer. Got into optimization very early. Of course, shape optimization. We had two early startups. Morphing computational fluid dynamics meshes. Obviously, many of our customers, this is late 2009, 2010, 2011, we were completely bottlenecked by the ability that we had to do simulation, to do CFD simulation. This is very common use case here. we built in some optimization into our software that would very easily and very quickly make the design changes to these CFD models. Of course, then we had a whole bunch of models that had to be solved. And so in 2010, we began looking to the cloud and began deploying instances in the cloud running ANSYS. At that time, we set up a VPN back to our license server, and that's how we were doing our ANSYS simulation. We did this quite successfully. Our startup did extremely well up until 2016. And at that point, Tejas, who I'll introduce in a moment, actually reached out to me and asked me if I'd be interested in joining Microsoft Azure to begin supporting their HPC customers. At that time, and I'll share Tejas's background in a minute, Microsoft Azure was just about to launch Linux RDMA on Azure. They needed some support for these applications, and so I went over to Azure to help support their HPC customers. In early 2018 or so, actually in 2017, it became very obvious that at Azure we had a virtualization problem in the HPC space, and we'll talk more about that later. But from the RDMA perspective, we could only get so fast. There was a limit for our latency, and there was also inherently a limit for our bandwidth. We did a lot of talking. We spoke with all of the players in the field, so the folks at Penguin, some of the folks at IBM over on their cloud offering side, and then of course at Oracle. This was right around the same time that Karan was coming over to Oracle, and we began to realize that Oracle, with their bare metal, so Vinay talked about the off-box virtualization, that they weren't going to be restricted from virtualization on the networking layer. The problem is Oracle wasn't nearly as developed as Microsoft Azure was from an HPC perspective. So Oracle didn't have RDMA. Oracle didn't have a high-frequency SKU. At that time, the first time that I talked to Vinay, Oracle had one data center. And so we're at Microsoft with with tens of data centers. I get hundreds of data centers, tens of regions that had HPC in it, coming over to Oracle that had a single region. First time I talked with Vinay was right across the street down there in late 2017. I shared with him why I didn't feel like Oracle was ready for HPC because of all those things that I talked about. Vinay's response was, "You're absolutely right, come over and fix it." And that's how, I guess, I came to Oracle. So I joined Oracle in early 2018, and we began building out these products. So my first product release, so I'd been working in services, I came over here to work on product. My first product release was our HPC Shape, which happened at Oracle Open World last year. So this was the Intel 6154 chip. Which 3 gig base frequency, but of course we would much rather talk about the turbo boost frequency of 3.7. That makes us look even better. Then of course around the same time we began rolling out RDMA. So we'll talk about Rocky V2 and a little bit of that moving forward. So that's my story. Now the third part of this Three Musketeers trio is Tejas. Tejas by far is the most handsome of the three of us. He now, and you'll hear from him later today. Here, I'll leave his picture back up there. Apparently we heard, yes, he's handsome. You'll hear from Tejas a little bit later today. At Microsoft Azure, and I think some of you may have worked with him while he was there, Tejas was the HPC product manager. So he launched the H series, which was the first series at Azure that had InfiniBand, that had RDMA network, and did a fantastic job. We can't share the numbers, but he grew the HPC business at Azure very well. It was our interaction, me and Tejas specifically, where we began to see some of the challenges around RDMA. Now, it was a first. Microsoft was the first in that space. They were the first to offer RDMA on the cloud, and that was a very good thing. So, Tejas's background, he's a finite element engineer. He actually worked at Altair for a time, I think, Piyush, way back in the day. Left Altair to begin selling Microsoft HPC. So this is back in the mid-2000s, late 2000s. From what I understand, he was quite good at it. But of course, yeah, I won't talk too much about Microsoft HPC. He then went to Azure. We encountered some of these problems. Karan had come over mid-2007. I had come over early 2018. And then Tejas came over mid-2018. After Tejas joined, we sat down, the three of us sat down and basically sketched out the roadmap for what HPC was going to look like, not just from an executive engagement perspective, a product perspective, and then a go-to-market perspective. And that's what we've been working on executing for the last year and a half, basically. And all the credit goes to Vinay that you just talked about. What Vinay didn't share, and Nicole, this is where you can start to interrupt me if you need to, was I was at ISC in 2018. Addison and somebody else were on a panel. We were doing the vendor showdown. I think everybody's familiar with those. I got up, and the very first question that Addison asked me, and I forget if it was Addison or one of the other guys there, said, "What the hell is Oracle doing here? You guys killed off Sun 10 years ago. It kind of feels a little bit like North Korea." That was Addison, yeah, okay. Yeah, it sounds a lot like Addison. And like, I couldn't quite make the connection between Oracle and North Korea, but I understood what he was saying. He was saying, listen, Oracle was very vocal, and I say Oracle, Larry Ellison was very vocal about Oracle moving away from the HPC business. And there, I have no doubt, are people in this room who were affected by that move when Oracle bought Sun. The thing that I told Addison, and the thing that I've been saying ever since, and I'll share a little bit more about it later, is Sun Microsystems didn't go away. All right, Sun was acquired, yes, but Sun became, and I don't know if you guys know what Exadata is, but Sun became the hardware arm of Oracle. Sun became and I don't know exactly the numbers, but the hardware that the Sun engineers were building became the hardware for our Exadata platform, which is a multi-billion-dollar a year business. What's that? Really? I wasn't aware of that. So anyway, I mean, Sun became the HP arm. The Sun guys, there were for sure layoffs, no question about that. But the Sun engineers that were still building hardware are still here today building hardware. When I began talking about HPC on Oracle Cloud, they literally came out of the woodwork. I started getting inbound emails from guys in Burlington saying, hey, and they still refer to themselves as Sun engineers. We've been with Sun for 25 years. We're members of the spec steering committee. Do you need our help? What can we do to help you out? Our PSR team, our performance team, is built almost entirely of former Sun engineers. So I like to say that maybe some of the sales guys went away, but the people building the hardware are still here, or are still here. So I think somebody had asked that question, and Vinay kind of dodged it. He didn't really grab it. He didn't really address it. But the three of us, Karan, Tejas, and I, was supported by a lot of other people, no question about that, have had an uphill battle. Vinay has gone to bat for HPC in front of Larry. And if you guys can remember some of those, that one particular press conference, that wasn't an easy battle to have. But Vinay was successful. Don Johnson, Vinay's boss, who reports to Larry, were successful in that political fight, and that's what brings us here to what we're doing today. So to give you an idea about what you're going to hear about, Karan takes care of kind of the top level strategy and the executive engagement. He's the one that, and those of you that know him, he's fantastic when it comes to politics. He knows what to do, he knows who to talk to, and how to get the approvals that we need to push forward. From my side, I cover the technical aspects of the product and the technical aspects of the solution. We've been building, initially in the actually in the mid-2000s, I started on SGI machines, moved on to some on-prem stuff at Ohio State, at NERSC, and now have been working in the cloud for the better part of a decade. So we have a good understanding of technically of HPC. From Tejas's side, as he will, I'm sure, make sure everybody understands, he is at heart, at first, a technical person, but he's very good from the sales strategy perspective. And so Tejas takes care of the technical sales enablement. We have thousands of sellers at Oracle, and Tejas's responsibility is to make sure that those sellers are, number one, educated about HPC, and number two, have the collateral that they need to go and sell HPC. We initially, again, when we started this a year ago, a little more than a year ago, it was the three of us doing this. There are, if we include the sellers that are actively selling HPC now, if we include the teams that are working with us, both on the engineering side and on the product management side, there's probably over 200 people now that are directly engaged specifically on HPC and GPU development, testing, and selling. Yeah, that's us. And we feel like we've been pretty successful at it. There are, at supercomputing, you'll start to hear some of the recent large-scale wins that we've had. You'll hear as we talk today, and Vinay mentioned customers like Reliance. Reliance is the third or fourth largest telecom company in the world. They're running their machine learning, their NLP, on top of our GPUs. We have folks at Vinay mentioned Denso. Denso, of course, is a tier one automotive supplier that are running their computational fluid dynamics on top of Oracle Cloud. We have rendering customers, of course, in the hyperscale space, a number of them. Folks like Yellow Dog in the UK or Snowball in Israel that are running their rendering on top of Oracle Cloud. So we feel like we've been very successful in this space, and it's accelerating. This is, as we were talking with Addison at Supercomputing, we were sharing a little bit of this story, and this was his response. He said, "This is fantastic, but nobody knows about this. You know, you need to get out and to communicate this message." And his suggestion was having a press and an analyst day, and that's what we're here doing. So this is the story that we have. This is the three of us that have worked together. We have a strong supporting cast that's here throughout the day. As you see us walking around, if you have some questions, feel free to reach out. We'd love to chat a little bit more about it. You'll get a feel, I think, a little bit for each of our personalities. Which I think is a very interesting part of the discussion, because all three of us are very different people, but together we make one half decent HPC engineer, and that's and we've been bringing HPC to the cloud. We feel like this is the first opportunity that we've had to do HPC the right way, to have bare metal, to have the network performance that we need, to have the storage performance that we need, that we'll talk about a little later this afternoon as well. So that's my spiel. Hopefully there won't be too much like markety, salesperson-y, personal interest stories throughout the rest of the day. That's all I have. Any questions from any of the folks? And if not, you guys are going to have 30 minutes to sit and do whatever, because I think we're a bit ahead of schedule right now. So, or about 15 minutes, I think. Yeah.
I have a quick question regarding collaboration. I'm just going to use Oracle and the Microsoft relationship. I mean, how do you see, or how is that working today as far as partnership with Microsoft and Oracle Cloud Federation? And is there any joint type of collaboration with whether it's applications and specific workloads with customers, customer-specific opportunities where you're actually working together hand in hand lockstep between the two companies? Or is it just Oracle's, we'll introduce this, we'll support that specific application on our cloud as needed? Maybe you can expand on how you see the other partners or ISVs that are in this room as this rolls out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you see where I'm going with
Yeah, absolutely, and said like a good former Sun seller, right? So the partnerships that we have with Microsoft and VMware that was just announced as well are interesting, and this is a space that that we're pioneering, and I think there is still a lot of boundaries that have to be identified and felt out, and we are both extremely cautious. We both recognize that there are things that the other does well, and we're both very jealous of our customers and our customer success. And so what it's been to this point, and there are a few public references, you can go out and look at Larry's Open World talk about what they're doing. What it has looked like in practice so far is a customer that has commitments, that has paid both to Microsoft and to Oracle, that wants to use some part of our cloud combined with some part of Microsoft's cloud. It typically so far has been the intense interest in Azure, data warehouse, and then looking on the Oracle data warehouse, on the automated data warehouse, ADW, on the Oracle side, and feeding that data or streaming that data into one of the shapes or the instances on the Microsoft side. We're starting to see interest in specifically in HPC, where customers are actually asking to run a containerized HPC application on something like specifically Singularity, and streaming data from an object store inside of Microsoft Azure. This is extremely exciting. This is a solution that we're in the process of building out for a few particular customers, and I think from the HPC perspective, it really highlights the value of us working together. So we recognize that no enterprise customer is every enterprise customer we're working with is looking at some sort of multi-cloud strategy. And the two enterprise cloud players, Microsoft and Oracle, working together benefits our customers. So it was a long answer for a short question. So.
I appreciate that.
No problem. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, we've got about maybe 30 minutes or so before you have to hear from me again. We'll go a little bit deeper into the roadmap, where we're heading, both with our products and with our solution. Feel free to wander around. We've got coffee outside. There's a lot of donuts here, and thanks so far for your interaction.